Welcome to episode 16 of Kent's Garage. Right away you're going to see there's a few different cars in the shop this week. You know, due to popular demand and majority vote, yes, I did go out and purchase this W116 300 SD. I just couldn't pass it up. You know, just the enthusiasm for the car, for the color and everything else just kind of motivated me to get out there and make the guy an offer that he could not refuse, and I trailered it at home. It's also motivated me to start a new video series titled Rescuing Old Mercedes. Whether or not we rescue this one here is going to depend a lot on what we find in the next few days. We're going to get it up on the lift. We're going to really look it over closely for rust. And I'm going to pull a bunch of parts off of it and take some critical measurements, find out if we've got any hidden or collateral structural damage on that front end. And then finally, we're going to do a valve adjustment compression test. And then, only after those three things am I going to make the decision whether or not I'm going to rescue this car. If not, we'll rescue it to help other people fix their 300 SDs. So I've already filmed parts 1 and parts 2 of this series. I'll give you a sneak peek right now of part 1. And then later in this week, probably in the next couple of days, you'll see both those two parts go up on YouTube, so just stay tuned. Well, due to popular demand and majority vote, I've decided to go ahead and purchase the Green Ghost. Now you're probably wondering why I'm calling it the Green Ghost. I'll explain that later in the video, but for right now we got to get this thing loaded up on the tow dolly and get the driveline unhooked before we tow it back to the shop. Of course, we got to kick the tires, you know. It wouldn't be a good sale unless you went and kicked the tires, right? Let's go ahead and kick this back tire. You know, we gotta be tire kickers here. Okay, we got good tires. We're gonna buy this baby. Just look at how close this accident came to bending that front frame rail. We're talking about maybe an inch or two lower, and it would have hit this frame member here and probably buckled that crumple zone back in behind the headlight. So I'm really happy about that. If that would have happened, I would be passing on this repair. The grill shell is in amazing condition. Look at that. Even the chrome strip are not dinged. Looking at this hood a little more closely, I can see it's had body work done on it in the past. Look at the amount of Bondo and that big crack in the body filler that's occurred. So this hood probably is going to need to be replaced, but that's great because I have a really nice hood back at the shop. The deck lid's got a few scratches in it, but once again, there is no damage to these. It's easy to bend these up because they are aluminum, but this deck lid is also going to buff out real well too. You know, this car looks a little bit better the more I look at it, particularly this left side. When I get up front here and sight down the side, I don't even see any door dings. Literally, that's amazing on a car that's this old. So most of the paint on this car is in excellent condition except for the damaged area and the hood. And the roof's also in very good condition, and I believe it'll buff out just fine. And here we go again on another rescue attempt. Can you believe it? When will this end? I don't know. There's always another one to save. Should we save this one? It's going to come down to those three key factors: rust, structural damage, and the condition of the engine and transmission. So we'll get this thing up on the lift, and we're going to find out if it will pass those three tests before we make the final decision whether or not to repair it or part it out. I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, well, Kent, why did you call this the Green Ghost? Let me explain. You know, about 12 years ago, I picked up an absolute pristine 1979 300 SD, very similar to this one. It was anthracite gray with black interior, and the car was immaculate. Was purchased from the original owner who bought it right here in my hometown. And I watched this car drive around town for a few years and finally was able to contact the owner and acquire this car when she finally decided to sell it. Now my daughter drives it, so it's still in the family. I don't personally own it anymore. She owns it. In fact, it was kind of interesting when she found out I was thinking about selling it. She about had a heart attack. Said, "Dad, don't sell the Gray Ghost." And that's what we call it. And the reason we call that car the Gray Ghost is because that original owner started calling the car the Gray Ghost back in the 1980s. So it kind of stuck. And as long as we've owned that anthracite gray 300 SD, it's been known as the Gray Ghost. So in honor of the Gray Ghost, we now have the Green Ghost. So welcome the Green Ghost to my fleet. And we'll find out whether it's going to stay in my fleet later on this week. You can see that the Green Ghost has taken the place of my 560 SEC. We kind of wrapped that project up for the time being, and it included a complete engine detail. I've had people say that's probably one of the prettiest and cleanest engines they've ever seen in any old car. And just think about how old a 1988 car is. Take a look at the finished product after spending quite a few hours meticulously detailing the engine and the engine compartment in that car. So I've got a full on-demand video. The video is about an hour long. A lot of people have been asking me, Kent, how'd you do that? How'd you make that look so nice? Well, if you want to find out, just go to my website and watch that video. I will put a link in the show more description of this episode of Kent's Garage. It'll take you right to that if you're interested in finding out how to make your engine look like that 560 SEC. Now, we also did a complete SLS fluid flush, and we did a complete power steering fluid flush using synthetic power steering fluid. I've made videos for each of those operations. They're instructional videos, and I put together 2 kits for each of the SLS and the power steering fluids, and those will be also available on my website within the next few days. So let me give you a sneak peek now of some of those videos I'm currently working on. On a regular basis, you need to go through the procedure of flushing the old fluid out, and at the same time you flush the old fluid out, you're putting all brand new hydraulic fluid into the system. It's not difficult. It is a 2-person job. You're going to need a helper to pull this off. But the very first thing you want to do is pull your tank. Now on the 560 SEC, the tank's located over here. On the 300 TD wagon, the tank is located over there. The tanks are different sizes, but pretty much they're all the same. They have a filter in the lid, and they have an outlet hose. Now, one of the things you should be prepared to do if you're planning to do a flush is you should always replace this low pressure hose if it hasn't been replaced in the last 10 years. I've seen so many problems with this hose. They deteriorate, they rot, they leak from the inside out, and so was the case on this 560 SEC. Even though it only has 104,000 miles on it. It doesn't have anything to do with mileage. It has to do with the age of this braided hose. So be prepared. You know, get some braided hose, because once you pull the tank, just replace the hose. And let's double check level here. It went down about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to top it off. There we go. Now notice, I've got about 1/4 of a liter left. So if you do the flush right, that's about what you'll end up. You have to be careful. Once it starts running clear, you need to stop, or otherwise you may not have enough fluid to top off when you're all done. I've lowered the car back down, removed the rear chocks, and I'm ready to roll this 560 SEC out of the shop. Now the procedures I've shown you will work for almost all models from 1986 up into the mid-1990s. So there's a couple things I want to share with you as parting comments. You probably noticed that this happened very quickly. I mentioned that at the beginning of this video. Things kind of happen real fast. So even with someone in the car starting and stopping the engine, we actually only ran the engine about 6 seconds. And we only ran it twice before we completed the flush. It is a quick job. It tends to be a little bit messy, so you need to be prepared. Notice here, I've got dirty rags. I got drips all over this drip pan here. I've got a container here for the old fluid. So even now, I'm not done yet. I've got to clean all this up. I got to pour this into a container and take it to the recycle place. And then I'll wipe down all my tools, because this synthetic power steering fluid, by the way, is very slippery. So you want to have some blue shop towels handy and keep those gloves wiped off, or otherwise you're going to have a hard time holding on to the bottle or holding on to your tools. So I hope you find this procedure helpful, this is something that should be done, probably every 40 to 50,000 miles on these cars. And once again, I highly recommend you consider doing this to your own car. And be sure and tell any of your friends who own these old Mercedes-Benz, don't forget about the power steering fluid. You'll notice here that my W115 240D is also missing from the shop today. We wrapped that project up. You cannot believe the difference. Just look at the before pictures here of the engine compartment and the after pictures we took just a few days ago when we finished all that detail work. We also did a major service on that engine. That included valve adjustment, new rebuilt injectors, fast glow plugs, injection pump timing. Let me tell you, when we fired that thing up, what a difference. Not only in terms of power output, but in terms of smoke. And I think the biggest difference was due to the injection pump timing being about 6 degrees off. So that made a huge difference. You just gotta hear this engine run. Now I'm working on a couple of long videos on that car. One will go over all that engine detail work we did, and the other video will kind of give a summary overview of all the tuning work that we did on the engine. Those will be done in the next week or so, and they'll be going up on YouTube. But right now, let me just give you a sneak peek of one of those videos that I'm working on, and then in next week's episode of Kent's Garage, we'll come back here and I'm going to let you hear that 240D engine start and run. You can see I'm still working on this old 240D here, but I'm happy to report I'll probably wrap up the engine compartment today, and we're going to roll this out of the shop. It's come a long way. You remember a few episodes back I talked about taking the 240D out of the Kent's Garage series because it was taking too long, and it has continued to take a lot of my time. But we rolled up our sleeves yesterday, said, okay, it's time to wrap this thing up. Take a look now. I'm going to show you some of the things I did yesterday to kind of start putting everything back together after we completed the injection pump timing. And then I'm going to show you a couple things that we still need to do. And when I say couple, that's tongue-in-cheek, because I'm looking at this and I'm going, oh no, look at all this. Remember what I said, when you start detailing an engine like this and you start correcting problems that your eye sees, eventually the eye is going to find other things. And it's going to look over here and look over there. It's kind of like fixing up an old house. You fix up one thing and then everything else looks bad. So let me show you. I even painted the front of the radiator. And after I finished, I looked down below and I said, oh, look at that wiring harness. Now the front of the car has been repainted and the painter just went ahead and sprayed over that wiring bundle. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to paint that black so your eye doesn't go to it. Now once I painted the radiator, you can see my eye is now going to the painted wiring harness. So that's the joy of detailing. Is it really therapeutic? I guess you'll have to answer that question yourself. But I'll go ahead and show you a few things that we're going to be finishing up today. But all joking aside, let me show you those things I've been working on and the things I'm going to have to finish today. Just take a look at how nice this area looks just forward of the engine. This includes the radiator, the fan shroud, the fan. All these parts have been cleaned, pulleys have been painted, and I even painted the radiator just the color I wanted. This will give you a really good example why you need to be very careful in choosing the sheen of the black you use. If I would have painted this radiator with a shiny black, it would really stand out. But right now it kind of blends into the shroud. I've cleaned the hoses and put sealant on the hoses. So this area right in here is looking really good. Okay, now let me show you some of the things I'm going to do to wrap this up. This will give you a good idea what I'm talking about when I talk about that final phase of detailing, where you're looking at all these plastic parts, you're looking at rubber, you're looking at wiring harnesses that are dirty and grimy, and your eye goes to that once you clean the whole engine up. So I'm going to tackle those now. As I was cleaning up these covers for the wiring harness, I noticed this bracket here, and it looks pretty grungy. Originally this was cadmium plated, and you can see how over the years it's gotten kind of stained, and it's really ugly. So I think I'm going to remove this from the firewall. We'll get this up on the bench. We've been compiling all these scenes. I've had additional scenes on how I painted the parts, how I cleaned the plastic. We're going to add this information on cleaning all the rubber and plastic parts in the engine compartment and then sealing them. There's a bunch of other things I'm going to throw into this video that were not in the original episodes of Kent's Garage. Start out and show you what this thing looked like when we just started on it. And now later this afternoon, I'll go ahead and show you one shot of it completely done just before we roll it out of the shop. I'll be the first one to admit it's not perfect, but in keeping with my 80-20 rule of perfection, I think you'll agree it's reached the 85 percentile and it looks just great. Down the road, I'll be able to open the hood of this car and be able to impress people with just how nice the engine and the engine compartment looks on this old 240D. I want to introduce a new segment in this week's episode, and I'm going to call it the Contest of the Week. So here's the contest, or I should say the question. This is a sunroof panel out of my 240D. Obviously, it's going to need some cleaning and detailing, but it has a problem that most of these headliner panels have when you remove them, and that is the edges are coming loose. You can see they were originally glued at the factory, but they're all coming loose. And this needs to be fixed. This needs to be glued up tight or it's going to jam up inside the tracks when you move the sunroof back and forward. So I'm looking at this. I'm throwing out the question here. What is the best glue to use to re-glue these edges on this vinyl material to these metal straps on this headliner panel here? Go ahead and put your answers below in the comment section. We'll come back next week in episode 17 and I'll kind of show you how I repaired this and what type of glue I prefer to use. Let me take you on an adventure. Just 2 weeks ago, I got to go on a river rafting trip down the Nooksack River to look at the eagles. I got to see about 300 to 400 eagles. It was really amazing. I got to go along with my daughter-in-law, Laura, my wife, Linda, and my son, Matthew. We got to go on a 4-person boat. This was designed specifically for shallow water. You'll get to see that later in the video.
That chair will move.
Come on,
so
Linda.
So you know, it swivels.
You can do it.
This is when we hit the
Yeah, when it closes, it just snaps itself
If
shut.
babies sit here.
No, well, you know, they got those baby life jackets with the strap around.
if we hit a class 2, you can grab this.
Okay, how's this? This seat is great for pan shots. What do you think, Matt? Is that pretty comfortable?
I feel slightly vulnerable, but I'm prepared.
Hey.
Here we
Okay,
go.
guys.
How you doing, Linda?
Stop playing.
Right. So one more thing, too, kind of while we're floating down before we get too far. Oh, am I videoing?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Oh, you're gonna get all over me.
One of the best ways to kind of hold on to, so we've got these metal bars here. Some people have found comfort in one hand on that, whatever, but I also like the bottom of the seats. Yeah, he's going strap. He's going baby diaper strap.
Oh, you mean hold on like here?
Yeah, so
hold on
basically,
there.
this boat is going to kind of rock and roll a little bit.
Why should I hang on?
Well, I don't want to have to get you
I don't
on
want to
that
hang
log
on.
jam.
Whoa, white water ahead.
Especially I tell that to the guys in my here when it's 15 degrees.
It's class 3. Hang on. Oh, we just missed the big stuff. Whoa, that was close.
Spent 4 days up around the Cascade Pass area.
Ooh, oh my gosh, you guys, look at the icicles.
Yeah, this has been building and building for the last week or so. Look at that juvenile.
That's
A delinquent or normal?
no, it looks like he has
Confused.
scabies. It looks like he has
It hasn't really decided on its captain.
Your hair looks good, Linda.
Got it, we got it. I'm expecting to see between 3 to 4, maybe 500 birds today. So, yeah, look at this one in front of us.
right here. Dry out, is that what it is?
So
This is where they came up with the term spread eagle.
It's amazing, it's really cool.
Those guys are up there trying to dry out the
Look how
feathers.
it's like, oh, look at the old Navajo there.
I found out that given the chance, these eagles are basically lazy. You know, they'll just sit in the tree and wait for some dead salmon to wash up on the beach. They won't even go after them in deep water if they don't have to. Now, the trip took about 4 hours, and there were 3 places where we had to get out of the raft and walk along the shoreline or along the banks of the river because the river was literally too shallow for us to stay in the boat. And the guide would take the boat around and meet us up down the river a ways, and then we'd head out again.
And I bring my Toyota Dolphin up, and I park it at the bartender's house. She has a hookup there, so I don't have to pay. Septic, all that business. It's just a little slice of heaven, I guess.
And my brother and I.
Laura, we went there when we did that circle, remember? We drove around Darrington and
The mountain loop.
Oso before Oso slid away.
They are just like, what in the wide world of sports is going on here? If your towns were full of dead, rotten salmon flesh, would you look at
There were a couple times where we really got to get up close, personal with these majestic birds. And we'd watch them sit there, and they'd look at us, and we'd look at them, and let me tell you, they weren't too afraid of us. We were the only people on the river, but it was really quite exciting to watch these birds take flight. Man, they're beautiful in flight.
So sometimes we'll end up. Hey, we
Definitely.
Oh, I thought you're like, walk over there.
maybe that's what it was. Hey! YouTube that! Use yourself bald eagle sign language.
The boat sank, so we're going to have to finish this trip on foot. But we'll be okay. Oh, big fish. Don't leave us, please.
Come on, man,
please.
we're going this way.
Don't leave us.
Middle front, back. There's a horse. You guys saw that over there. Had a really good idea. Can't turn around.
Municipal house on it.
You're missing.
Yeah,
You're
this
missing
is a good house.
prime. Wow, look at their repair there of all their big blocks.
Yeah, they're losing their bank over there.
Notice that we started out in the snow and the ice, and look where we ended up 4 hours later, with the sun shining on us and clear blue skies. It was a trip that I'm always going to remember.
Oh, look, I think they have a Christmas tree farm.
Yeah.
That was an amazing trip down the river on that raft, and to see all those eagles, that was really inspiring. And to top it off, the next day we went up to Mount Baker and had this beautiful snow day. You just couldn't believe the sun was out. People were snow skiing with shirt sleeves on, and we had a great time playing in the sun with our grandchildren. So you see, Happier's back in the shop here. I've decided to pull it in. I was so impressed with how well those door hinges came out on the 240D after we lubricated them, and I decided I wanted to bring Happier in here, do a little more detailing, and lube the door hinges on this one. Because look, see, the doors are moving okay, but they haven't probably been lubricated in 20 or 30 years either. So we're going to tackle this lubrication and cleaning job on this one, and then next week I'll kind of show you the results. I'm hoping to get to the point here where I can just take this and just go like that and it will close. But you can see here it's not happening, okay? So who knows? Maybe we'll end up with a really cool closing door on Happy here. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Kent's Garage. It looks like it's going to be another really busy week here around the shop. We've got Happier to work on. We've got the 300 SL to work on. I've got to work on the Green Ghost, determine whether or not we're going to save that thing or not. So in the next episode, we'll bring you up to speed on some of these projects. So have a really good week and safe motoring to you all.